And we are now live streaming.
Hi, Cindy, this is Garry Rose. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
You can mute yourself now. Thank you.
All right, I'll see if I can find where I can do that. I see it.
Are you okay?
Something seems to have gone out on my audio. I'm gonna
Call in?
Yeah, I'm gonna call in. If for some reason I'm not connected and Paul is there, can you have him start?
Okay, Paul just came on. So yeah, just go ahead and call him in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Cindy, I see Mark Smithers as an attendee, not a panelist. Is he an applicant?
Okay, everybody.
Okay, Mark, I just promoted you. Walter, do you want to test your audio? Walter?
Yes, hi, now I can hear you.
Okay, please mute yourself. Sean, do you want to test your audio?
Yes, how's that?
Perfect. Mark,
Great.
do you want to test yours?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Okay, so if Mark and Sean, if you could please mute yourself, and the council will be calling on each applicant. Let me see. Jeff, if that's you, go ahead and unmute yourself on your phone. Try *6 or *9.
Can you hear me, Cindy?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm unfortunately my computer is having a little bit of audio trouble, so I'm on computer video but telephone audio. Okay, we're just getting to 4 o'clock, and we'll just look and make sure we've got a quorum. And it's looking as if we do. We have our council, we've got our city clerk, we've got our applicants. Cindy, are we ready to begin the meeting?
We are ready.
Okay, well, I will call to order then our special City Council special meeting of Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. These are applicant interviews for our ad hoc water and wastewater rate study advisory committee. And we will begin with our roll call, please.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Here.
Vice Mayor Doreen?
Good afternoon, here.
Councilmember Hardy?
Here.
Paul?
Here.
Ito?
Here.
Okay, we'll move to adoption of the agenda. I'll look to our city clerk to see if there are any changes to this afternoon's agenda.
There are none.
So I'll call for a motion on adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Councilmember Hardy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ito?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doreen?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Thank you. So we'll move public comment, being this is a special meeting under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the item. Each person's comment shall be limited to 4 minutes. So we'll open public comment after we get into the item. So this is our item. It's item 5.1, and this is the City Council interviews for the Water and Wastewater Rate Study Advisory Committee. And we're really pleased to have all of you here and putting forth your applications. It's, I think, a really tremendous opportunity for us to work together as a community with city staff and also with Raftellus, the consulting firm who's going to be doing this water and wastewater rate study. And so our application process, we have 8 applicants for 7 positions. Cindy, will you walk us through the process by which we're going to go through the interviews and our selection process?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So applicants were invited to attend the applicant interview special city council meeting. And we will conduct the interviews during this time. And then during the regular session, we've agendized for the council to discuss the applicants, take a break for the council to vote, and then I will tally the votes and I will bring the results back to the city council for consideration.
Thank you. So we'll do the interviews here, and then when we get into the regular meeting, that is where we'll do the actual.
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth, try unmuting yourself on your computer and see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
On either one connection or the other. What won't work is for him to have audio open on both.
So it appears my computer audio just came back on. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
If this happens again, what I'll do is ask the vice mayor to just simply jump in and I will step off if we get into another situation like that, if my audio crashes. So with that, and I'm also seeing our city manager, Jim McCann, on, pleased to see him as well. So we're going to get into our application interviews, and my thought here is to do this alphabetically. And as I go through this, I'm seeing first alphabetically, unless there are any questions before we start from the applicants or council.
Could the applicants all just raise their hands? Okay, that was helpful. Thanks.
Okay, very well. Unless there are any other questions, why don't we just jump in? And Cindy, I believe we gave 10 minutes for each candidate. Is that what we're looking at?
I would try to keep it to no more than 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, very well. And this is just an opportunity for you to introduce yourselves and just give us a little bit about your background and why you chose to participate here. So why don't we start with Ms. Corsetti? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and just give us a little background and why you're interested in joining us on this committee.
My name is Arlene Corsetti. I've been a permanent resident of St. Helena since 2013 and a property owner since 1990, and have been coming to the Valley since 1956. 3 years ago, I sat on the Napa County Grand Jury, and I wrote the report on St. Helena. In preparing that report, I reviewed 10 years of financials, including the water and wastewater enterprise, the CIP reports, and the associated revenue bonds. I took a deep dive into the financial forecast, seeing the effect of the drought on water rates and the burden of our aging infrastructure. Since that time, having done that work, I followed all of the interesting aspects of the water and wastewater enterprise and the ensuing issues. And it came to me that probably some participation from the water and wastewater rate users would be imperative to fix some of the problems that we presently have. So my interest came from the work I did 3 years ago, but has continued up until this time. My background, I was in corporate America for 30 some odd years. I ran part of an insurance company. In my past career, I dealt with forecasting liabilities for many of the US Fortune 500 companies, large utilities and healthcare organizations, and figuring out a way to fund ongoing and future liabilities and setting up financial instruments and corporations to finance these liabilities. So I have background in finance, corporate liabilities forecasting, and I also sat on countless interdisciplinary committees to try and find solutions for these very difficult problems. I found that in meeting with others, and one of the most important things that I found is that there has to be a win for every participant and every stakeholder. And I think that one of the things that I would be here as one member of the ad hoc committee is, first of all, to represent some of those stakeholders and to ask the appropriate questions. I don't think it's the ad hoc committee's responsibility to actually tell anybody what to do, but I think it's incredibly important to ask the right questions. And I think it's important that when the rates are done, that all the stakeholders feel that they have won something and not lost. I think if it becomes a very uneven set of rates, if it becomes something that people can't easily understand, then I think that we will continue to have problems. I think you have to have the backing of the rate holders, because I think that we are facing some very large liabilities, some very difficult financing, and some difficult shovel-ready projects that need to be done. I certainly feel that that the consultants have an incredibly good background to do what they do. What they may not have is some of the local knowledge that some of the people who are applying would have for this ad hoc committee. I think that local knowledge, I think that a background with the stakeholders is imperative. And at this point, if you'd like to ask me any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Can you hear me at this point?
Yes.
I'm going to ask our vice mayor coming.
Now I've lost you.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't hear what you were saying, so I'm at a loss as to what you expect from me at this moment.
Vice Mayor Doring, Mayor Ellsworth is going to expect you to run the meeting.
Well, okay. Fellow council members, colleagues, would you like to allow each participant to make a brief statement before you started asking questions, or would you like to ask a question now? Anybody who wants the floor has it now, or we can have everybody do a brief introduction. What say you?
I think introductions first, then questions. I think it will be easier for you to manage the time that way. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking at the alphabetical order list and trying to figure out who's next. It looks like Mr. McCrea, will you be next if you wouldn't mind giving us a very brief introduction along the lines of what Ms. Corsetti just did. Thank you. If I didn't get the alphabetical order right, let me know.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I've lived in St. Helena off and on since 1943. When I was 4 years old, my parents bought
what was to become a winery at Stony Hill. And I eventually moved to St. Helena in 2000 and lived there ever since. I was in my work career, I was a vice president of Chevron. During that period of time, I was an 8-year member of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, which oversaw the rates for the water rates at that time. And I was deeply involved in setting water rates. I've in my career with Chevron, I was a serious financial analyst at one point or another, and do understand how to work with numbers. I've lived through the various water issues in San Francisco or in St. Helena for a long period of time, and hopefully this will provide an opportunity to put some of those to rest finally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCrea. Mr. Nirenberg, if I'm pronouncing your name right, please correct me if I'm not.
Hi,
You have
Walter
about
Nirenberg.
5 minutes. Give
Yep.
a brief introduction.
Sure. So, so we've been homeowners in St. Helena since about 2012, 2013. And in the process of becoming full-time residents, I recently changed my voting status from San Francisco to St. Helena. And, you know, my background is I've been in the banking and payment space for 40 years, Citibank, MasterCard, Visa, a few startups in between. And my interest, the reason I put my hand up for this was, you know, we live right in town. We're on city water. We've gone through the fear around the fires, and we've gone through the fear of opening our water bill. And I think that without the sort of the citizenry input to the council, there's a certain element that's maybe missing. And my hope is, and you know, I'm just so impressed with some of the other candidates here, your backgrounds. Mine sort of pales by comparison, but I grew up in New York City and lived in a co-op there. I was on the board, and here in San Francisco, I'm on the president of my board, the condo association. So I understand a little bit about decision-making by consensus, and done that in business my whole career. So that, and the fact that my perspective on St. Helena is we have a variety of different constituents. We have the residents, full-time and otherwise. We have the ring of those people who are not in the city proper, but depend on St. Helena for their day-to-day lives. And then we have visitors to the value. And I think that everybody plays a certain part in how we manage our you know, the resources that we have. And the other thing is that the importance of the water, you know, the utilities is so important to the other city ecosystems. It's not an independent. It's not an independent element. So much depends on how we manage that vital resource. You know, it touches so many other things that can impede or improve growth and a sense of well-being in our city. And And, so I'm very anxious to be more involved in city government, albeit tangentially through a committee like this. As I said, we have made a full-time commitment. We do 95% of our holiday shopping on Main Street. We employ only local services and vendors. And I'd like to give back as much as I can to my community. So that's my story. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for applying. I appreciate it. Mr. Marr, I know as I sit here now that I missed you.
I wasn't sure
Polite
if
to
first
say
names or
so,
last
but
names.
yes, you are an MA. You have the floor.
Happy to go. Thank you. And thank you for having me. Pleasure to go in front of you. So I moved here as a little background on myself. I moved here as a 13-year-old, born in Cincinnati, lived all over the country, never lived anywhere more than 2 years till my dad went to work for Behringer. Life calmed down. I graduated from high school in the Valley here and couldn't wait to leave the Valley, swore I'd never come back, and found myself years later, quite frankly, after getting an MBA at St. Mary's, I moved back up here to help do financial advisory work in the wine space, basically helping people, sort of boutique investment banking, helping people buy and sell wineries, large brands, and large vineyards. And I've been doing that since 1996. And I like to give back to the community. I've been on the Boys and Girls Club board for 22 years now. I don't know how I haven't termed out on that, but I was the board president and chairman of the capital campaign in which we raised the $7 million to build the St. Helena facility and the $11 million again to do the Calistoga facility. Two things I am incredibly proud of. What we do for these kids in this town is amazing, unbelievable. I also was on the school board and was the board president from 2011 to 2016. During that period, we passed a couple bonds upwards of $60 million. So I understand finance very well. I like numbers. My day job again is helping wineries analyze their positions and getting them ready to sell. I hold a real estate license. I'm a certified valuation analyst with the National Association of Certified Valuation Analysts. And unfortunately, I was a victim of the glass fire and lost my home, and so I have a keen interest on what everything costs these days, including utilities, getting water, and getting everything put back together. And I just looked at this committee as something that I thought I could be offer the time, and B, I would welcome the opportunity to look at these recommendations and findings, analyze them. I think I get very thoughtful. I do my homework. I think I'm thoughtful, work well with other people, and ultimately would be pleased to help in figuring out what's fair for the various users and for our people here in this town. I own a business in town. My home is actually on Madrone Knoll, so I'm in the county right there above Meadowood, but my business is in St. Helena here. Actually, I share the space in the American Ag Credit Building. That's my office, and we have an office in San Francisco as well. And again, thank you for your time and consideration. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Sean, thank you so much. Sorry to hear about the loss of your home. I did not know that. Just a moment here. You've given so much to this community for so many years, and so I want to go on record as thanking you. Just really astonishing contributions to the community that I am grateful for. Will continue to be grateful for, and you're still in it after all these years. And thank you for applying. So,
thank you. My toughest job, I forgot to mention, is picking up Deer Park Road between Silverado Trail and Highway 29. My family's been doing that for 40 years. My dad stopped long ago, and I can't quite seem to get my kids to take it over. But pleasure. Thank you.
Understood. Garry, Mr. Rose, are you on the line? I don't see you, but I see your name there.
Yes, I am. I had an appointment in Napa, and so I'm driving back and not able to video.
No worries. Be safe.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing just fine. I'm almost in town. I don't know how many more people there are. If they wanted to go ahead of me, I might be able to make it home. I'm just driving by Hall Winery at the moment.
That
But
actually
I can-
sounds like a great idea. We'll wait for you. Mr. Smithers, why don't you give a brief introduction, and then we'll go back to Mr. Rose a little bit later. I'll feel better as a lawyer.
Good afternoon, all you guys and gals. Thanks for, putting this ad hoc committee together. I think it's very important for the entire community, both the residents, which we've heard a lot from, as well as the businesses, to have a good understanding as to the process, and also ultimately believing in what the ultimate outcome is. As far as background goes, I've been here for 33 years. When our first kid was getting ready to be born, we started looking for a place to live in St. Helena. So we've had two boys that have both gone all the way through public school here in St. Helena. One, the older one, is a Calistoga municipal firefighter as well as St. Helena firefighter, and sort of went through the whole St. Helena firefighting group there, which led to him being able to get a full-time job 7 years ago in Calistoga. So he's been running around saving property and houses for us for the last several years, and pretty dramatic situation. As far as work goes, I was the CFO for Joseph Phelps Vineyards for 6 years. I have been working for Trinchero for the last 27 years. The first 23 or 4 as a CFO. Now I'm more of an advisory position to the family. So through the course of all that, I am a CPA also. I've worked with some pretty significant budgets and some pretty complex budgets. And really, I believe this rate study comes down to a complex budgeting scenario where there's multiple inputs. You have how much water are we going to use? What projects do we need to do? When do we need to do those projects? How are we going to pay for the projects? How much money do we need to have in reserves? What do we need to build up? I mean, so it's a reasonably complex modeling or budget with a lot of inputs. And I think my history, employment history, bodes well for me to sit on this committee here. And also I look at it as an extension of when I was on the 2017 ad hoc utility rate committee that made a few changes to things, which adjusted it maybe slightly. And also an extension of the SHAPE committee, which I chaired. So I just sort of look at it as a continuation. I like these committees that are short spurts of required, necessary involvement. I believe I built the trust of the residents through those two committees as well as businesses. So I think I sort of stand in this nice middle ground, and people don't always agree with my position, but I'm able to explain to them how I got to the answer I got to. And I think I'm well respected by the entire community in that regard. So I look forward to being able to serve on the committee, and if I'm not selected, that's okay too. I'll probably still be engaged. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Trinchero, you have a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Thank you for applying.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Mario Trinchero. I'm currently acting as the plant engineer for Sutter Home Winery for all Napa Valley facilities. My family has operated a business here in St. Helena since 1947. Was when my grandfather moved out here. I grew up here. I went through school here, and aside from a brief stint leaving for college, I lived here my entire life. I currently live in town, so I feel I bring the perspective of a resident and ratepayer to from the residential perspective. And then professionally, as the plant engineer here at the winery, I'm keenly tied into the business side of what a business would want to see, you know, crossing their meter, and what would be equitable from that angle as well. I've been acting in this current position since 2016, and basically building projects, figuring out the ins and outs. Where can we value engineer a solution to try to accomplish what we need with less money hitting the books? That's what I do. And the reason I wanted to apply to this particular committee, I got Cindy's email over the general announcement for this committee, and thought, well, if you're looking for engineering experience, somebody who knows how water flows through and around a winery, where they can cut, where they can't, that's it feels almost like on a professional level she was speaking directly to me. So thought that'd be a good place to weigh in. Plus, as a resident, you know, I've got a personal stake in this as well. And then also on a personal stake, you know, I've never been deeply involved in city government. I've always toyed with the idea and thought this might be a good way to dip my toe in the water, so to speak.
We need more people like you to dip their toe in. You look at the rest of us. Some of us are getting too old for this.
Well, don't scare me off, and we might.
Thank you. Thank you, Mario. Let's see. Kelly Wheaton, how about a few minutes of introduction from you? Welcome, and thank you for applying.
Hi, I feel awed by the credentials of all the other people that have applied. I do not come from the corporate world. My background, I have a master's in educational counseling, but I have a longstanding interest in the Valley and in water. My grandparents and parents bought a piece of property in the Napa Valley in 1960. And my husband and I originally built a house up there, and we had a spring-fed water system. We built a 10,000-gallon water tank out of basalite block. My son has gone on to, he's a professor in hydrology, fluid dynamics. He's very involved in stream restoration and everything to do with water. So I come at it from that end. I live outside of the city limits of St. Helena on Inglewood Avenue. And it's been difficult over the years as a resident. I've been living here for 32 years in St. Helena, at least with a St. Helena address. But because we never got annexed into the city, all things that happen in the city, we have no say in. You know, it's taxation without representation. And sometimes, and I have to actually put in a plug for Lester for years ago, getting some equity in terms of the additional surcharge on those living outside the city limits. And I'm not against a surcharge as long as it's equitable and everyone's paying their fair share. And so part of the reason that I applied to the committee is to represent the voices of people outside and people that are just everyday citizens. And I'm even a care customer and a senior citizen. And so the decisions you make don't just affect me in some sort of esoteric way. They affect my ability to pay bills and things like that. Although I may not have a background in finance, I've built several houses from the ground up and had to deal with all the managing of that. I think it's within my ballywick. I did get an A in statistics, so I feel comfortable with the math aspects of it. But I can't compare with the rest of these applicants in terms of their professional backgrounds with finance or engineering. And I'm just throwing my hat in as representing the everyday citizen. And I think it's a voice that you would be wise to really include, whether or not you select me for this process. But long term, you need to have a better interface between the public, and I mean Joe Q citizen, and the city's governing decisions. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. And as far as I can see it, and from my observations, you are all qualified and you're all welcome here. And the things that you have to say and the values that you impart, all the things that you bring to the table are valuable for us. I think we're looking for a more diversified set of viewpoints and a group that can work together to kind of advise, take information, and then ultimately advise us on the directions we need to take. I think well, let's see. Is Mr. Rose still with us? There you are. Okay, you've made it home. You're on. If you can. Thank you, Garry.
I did make it home. Thank you for your concern. So
about a 5-minute introduction.
Okay, my name is Garry Rose, and I've lived in St. Helena for going on 32 years. Live on Vineyard Avenue and have lived here the entire time. Again, I don't have a lot of experience with city politics or city commissions, but my interest in this started with trying to help put together a long-term permanent commission for water and wastewater commission for the water and wastewater enterprises. And then when this proposal came out for someone to serve on an ad hoc committee for the rate study, I thought that this would be a good way to get started on this, because it is, as Mark mentioned, sort of a short-term committee. It has a finite end. And even though I'm interested in the long-term operation of the Water and Wastewater Commission, this is a great place to start. My education is in the mechanical engineering business. I don't have much experience with water other than designing the systems. I had a consulting engineering firm, and we did both mechanical and electrical design. My experience with rates have more to do with electrical rates and natural gas rates, and running energy studies and deciphering the multitude of rate types that you see in different parts of the United States. I'm a licensed mechanical engineer in the state of California. I've let my license, I guess, go dormant or standby in Nevada, Idaho, Connecticut, Colorado, and Oregon, and just kept my California license. I don't stamp drawings anymore, thanks to the lawyers in this group. But so my real interest in this is to be part of the community, because I have not particularly avoided being on these types of committees. It's just something that I didn't feel I had time for. And I do have that time now, and I have a tremendous interest in it. I don't have a strong financial background, but you do have some financial training in order to get a license in the state of California as an engineer. But I do deal with a lot of numbers and graphs and charts, and they interest me, and I do understand all of that stuff. So rate structures are extremely important to me. I put solar on my house, so I fight through the PG&E rate structure on a monthly basis to see how that all ties together. So yeah, I'm just very interested in being a part of this committee and working with the esteemed group of people that have applied. Thank you very much.
Ellsworth. Thank you. I think what we're going to do now, Mr. Ellsworth now, Mr. Hardy, do you have any comments or any questions that you would like to direct to any of the applicants? Maybe get us started with a brief, if you have any questions of interest.
No, I do not at this time. Thank you.
On the council, have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you all for your interest. This is a very important initiative. I think it's a great first step for this rate study, and I'm looking forward to whatever group we end up with here. Thank you.
Councilmember Chateau, do you have any comments or questions?
And I would just echo what Councilmember Hall said. Thank you. It's very hopeful to see this kind of involvement and civic engagement. Thank you for being here and committing to the time by going through this process.
Before I go back, we can pick up Mr. Ellsworth. I don't know if we can, but I had a question for Mark Smithers. I'm just curious, because of your experience that you have acknowledged from 2017, back over that process, and you think, we didn't do this right, or yeah, we got this pretty correct. Any lessons learned that you can bring to the table this time around if you were selected?
Well, I mean, I certainly had a lot of experience interacting with the public and questions the public had from a variety of standpoints, whether we were moving too fast with projects or whether we were moving too slow with projects, and sort of the intersect where, you know, depending on where you put the project on its timeline over this 10-year period, you know, how are you going to fund it? And then what impact does that have on rates? And, you know, some people wanting to put off projects so that it doesn't, the cash flow needs aren't today, so it keeps the rates down, versus if you know, and I think we have to look at the projects now as to what we really need and what's really critical. And I think we need to look at it with an unbiased eye that says, we have to do what we have to do to keep the water flowing and keep the quality of the water there. So I think that's something that's going to need to be, you know, hopefully well explained to the entire community, you know, the business community as well as the residential community. And there were a lot of issues back then about Proposition 218 and what you could and couldn't do. And I think now that Prop 218 has been around for a while, I think it's much clearer. I think the consultants you've picked know what they can and can't do with rates, and, you know, and recognizing certain cost buckets and whatnot. So I'm hopeful that people will feel they might not like the answer to the rates, but I think they'll have a better understanding that everybody tried their darndest to come up with equitable rates. So, yeah.
Mrs. Wheaton or Ms. Wheaton. There a perspective that maybe we have more common ground than one would think. I know that, you know, I made comments at one of our city council meetings with respect to, you know, trying to avoid those, or I termed it class warfare. I mean, that's a strong language, but I get the point of representing. The word represent is maybe a word that we can all go, well, what does that mean? I hesitate to use that word, but I see your point. I mean, there's a viewpoint of folks in your particular setting, if you will, resident outside the city. Talk a little bit more about that. I think I understand that. I think that's welcome. Those kinds of diverse viewpoints are helpful for the rate consultants and certainly for the city council. Talk more a little bit about that.
I actually wrote a letter to the editor in response to those comments, and it wasn't printed this week, so that will go into more detail. But I don't believe that representing different constituencies or different stakeholders necessarily pits one up against the other. All I'm asking is that everybody have a voice that's represented and that they be dealt with fairly. And even the candidates that are applying here, you know, I went through the list and we have a very strong weighting on this, on one side versus another. And that comes about through the whole process of, I mean, when I saw the criteria for applying for this commission and, you know, financial background and blah, 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 I thought, you know, there's nobody like me that's going to be stupid enough to apply for this. It's only going to be somebody with that kind of, you know, corporate background. And so you end up filtering the kind of representation that you're getting from the get-go. And so I'm just stupid enough to throw my hat in the ring and say, hey, I just want to be the voice in the room for all the people that aren't being represented there. I'm not pitting one side against the other. I'm just saying, if you want the ultimate product that you come up with to be better received by the public, and you really do need that buy-in when you're talking about water, because everybody cares about it, even if they're not applying to this commission, that you need to have thought about what they're going to say in response, so that you have well-developed answers for those questions, so they feel as if the process has been fair. And so it's not about one side versus the other. It's about representing a broader spectrum. And even if I'm on this commission, it's still rather skewed, and that's just the way it is. But it's a part of the way government works. It's a part of the way public service works. And it's very difficult to get citizens engaged. And when they do engage, if they get knocked down, then they tend to go away and not come back. But they gripe a lot, and their only voice is in voting. And for me, or for there's one other person here that is outside of St. Helena, it's my community, but I don't get to vote. So, and the water is really important. The disadvantage of choosing me or the other individual that is outside the city limits is that the wastewater, we don't really have much to say. But again, I would just still be representing the same constituency of the everyday person and how it was going to affect them.
Appreciate your comments. Are there any comments from any of the applicants that speak to the last couple of questions that I've asked? Happy. Mr. Nirenberg, how about you? I see your hand raised. Briefly, we only have a few minutes, but yeah.
What Kelly was talking about, reflecting on one of the projects that I ran here in the building in San Francisco, was we did a replacement of the cold water pipes from the 9th floor down to the basement. And the key tenet that I tried to instill on the microcosm that would otherwise be the city of St. Helena was the idea of the tragedy of the commons, and that we are all a member of the same community. We have a limited resource that we all have to share. And, my one commentary was that, being charged a fine for overusing your water simply allows wealthier people to have more water than others. And so again, they're violating the very tenets of the tragedy of the commons. And so anyway, that was my one comment. And I was just sort of queuing off of what Kelly was saying. Ms. Wheaton.
Thank you. Ms. Corsetti, I see your hand raised. You have the floor for a few minutes.
Hi, I think that, Kelly has some great points. I think that one of the things that happens is that at the get-go, we don't recognize who are the stakeholders. There are many, many stakeholders when it comes to the use of water and wastewater from the St. Helena enterprise. I think it's incredibly important that every stakeholder feels they have won in this. If we say that, we're going to favor one or the other one can afford it more than the other, or commercial should get this and residential doesn't get that, I think we're going to fail at this. So I think that at the very get-go, we better figure out who the stakeholders are in this process and make sure that each of the stakeholders walks away feeling they have won something, that they haven't lost. I'm done.
If I may.
Councilmember, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we do indeed have a very diverse group of users with, large commercial use, residential use, business uses, and, competing interests, competing water needs. So I think it's tricky, and you do need to get the stakeholders. You do need to understand what's important for each. And in my day job, advising wineries and people buying vineyards, water is like the number one issue now, and water availability analysis. And without water, these things just don't trade, or they don't trade at a very good price. So wineries are tremendous users of water and wastewater. And that's a, that's a big hurdle of getting a permit, traffic, neighbors, and wastewater. But I see this committee as important to really understanding the needs of those various groups. And you got several different buckets, and some buckets are larger in terms of needs. And there's a balance, and I think it just takes a thoughtful process to go through to come up with what is deemed the fairest for everyone.
Thank you, Sean. Councilmember Hardy, I don't know if you're there, but you have your hand up and you have the floor.
Sorry. I'm prompted to ask a question by some of the comments from Ms. Corsetti, which I think really go to the very heart of the challenge I see in front of us. In a lot of ways, by operation of law, utility rate setting in this context is a zero-sum game. We're not allowed to set rates to collect more revenue than we project for costs. It is not legal to run either the water enterprise or a sewer enterprise for profit. That was done many years ago in St. Helena, but it is now clearly and unequivocally principle. And one of the results is that for any given class of ratepayers, not and a given set of costs, rates cannot go down for one class unless rates go up for some other class. So I can easily think of things in terms of a quest for the most fair and equitable distribution of those costs across the different classes and ratepayers as one can imagine. But I struggle to see how we can realistically expect all of the ratepayers and all of the classes to feel like they got to win at a time when our costs have unquestionably gone up and significantly. So I'm really hoping that I can learn something about that from Ms. Corsetti and any other applicant who has some thoughts about that. Thank you.
Hardy, I'm going to go to Mr. Rose right now, then we'll go back to you. My goal at this point would be to try to complete the meeting at 5 o'clock so that our council can take a break and do the things they need to do, including getting a meal before the 6 o'clock meeting. But Mr. Rose, you have the floor for a few minutes, and then I'll go back to you, Ms. Corsetti.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make a comment about, it was a comment that I had made in a letter that I had written to the city council. And the original request for this application really made it look like they were, the different types of representation looked more like lobbying groups for given classes. And as I look at the group of people here, I really don't think that that necessarily has to be. I also mentioned that in Napa Valley, to get a group of citizens that are not representing the wine industry is going to be very difficult to do. And I wish I hadn't used the term representing the wine industry, because I think this commission or this committee really needs to focus on what Raftellus is doing. They're going to be the professionals here, and we need to look at what they're doing, and each of us will have our own viewpoint. And there's a certain amount of local knowledge that we can help Raftellus with, but I hope we don't get into a lobbying for one group over another. I don't think that really, I don't think it's possible, first of all, if Raftellus does the right job. And I think they're going to come up with a rate structure that, or maybe some options on rate structures that will eventually be approved by the city council but this committee really should not be a lobbying group for one group of or stakeholders over another. I think we really need to look at the rate structure for water for the city of St. Helena and the water customers. So I don't even like the word stakeholder, although I guess it's the only one you can really use. That's my only comment. Let's just not make it a lobbying effort for one type of user over another. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate your comments. Arlene Corsetti, did you want to make another comment? And we're going to finish up in a second here. I want to go back to the mayor in a minute, but go ahead, Arlene.
Thank you. Lester, just real quickly, I won't. In my review of all the financials that I did a number of years ago, one of the things I realized is that we don't actually particularly do well in how we deal with the effect of shovel-ready projects. And if we actually accounted for them correctly over a period of 4 years, you would find that the liabilities trail much longer and you're not making money. We're just not counting it right now. And there is a better way to do that. So that's one thing. The other thing about how do you do with stakeholders? Well, I would just suggest, having been in many meetings where there were stakeholders, if I'm a winery selling a bottle of wine for $60 and something happens where I'm required to charge another 25 cents, I may not like it, but it's not death defying. On the other hand, if I'm a person who lives off my Social Security check and now I have to pay another $1, that's death defying for that person. So a win is different in each category. It may be a win for a winery only to pay 25 cents. It may not be a win for a person on Social Security to pay $1. That's all. Yeah.
Last comments before I move back to the mayor. We're going to adjourn right here in about a few minutes, but I was wondering if Mayor Ellsworth, did you have anything else to say, or are you able to have any more comments?
He's not able. He asked me to please convey his appreciation for all the attendees and all the applicants. And so do you want to go ahead and call for public comment?
Yes, I do want to call for public comment. I didn't see anyone on, but I will do that.
Just for the official record, and there is no attendees, so.
Thank you.
So it's at your pleasure if you want to adjourn the meeting or not.
Comment, I assume.
Say that again? Oh, city manager.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Paul? Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here very quickly. It's nice to actually put a face with a name or an email. I've corresponded with a number of you, so it's nice to meet you all. I can tell you from my own experience of working on rate structures, it's always very, very helpful to have a group of folks who are from the community, who have varied backgrounds and can bring their perspective and experience to the process. As staff, we're immersed in these numbers and in these projects, and it's great to get the input and perspective of folks in the community. So I really appreciate you all tossing your hats into the ring here. I think we've got some wonderful people for the council to consider. I'll just make one plug. I heard from a couple people saying, gosh, I'd like to get more involved in the community. And if you don't get selected for this, or regardless, if you do get selected, we've got a bunch of openings coming up on a variety of boards and commissions that go from complicated to just plain fun. So I would urge you, if you do have an interest in serving your community, to check in with our city clerk and see about those opportunities, because they're coming up. But thank you very much for offering to help us. I think you'll find it to be extremely rewarding, very interesting, and you'll have a lot of influence in the decision-making process. So I thank you.
I'm sorry, I was mute. Kelly, go ahead for just a brief comment.
Mr. McMahon, is those commissions and everything, do you have to be a St. Helena resident? Because I often see things, but I don't apply for them because I always figure I'm outside of the city so that I wouldn't qualify.
Cindy, can you answer that, please?
Yes, that's a great question, Kelly. And the only committee that is a requirement is the Planning Commission and obviously City Council. So it is at the pleasure of the City Council to waive the city limits requirement for the others.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we stay on topic without straying too far into that category. But Mr. Smithers, any last thoughts before I adjourn?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one quick little comment because there has been this discussion of stakeholders and lobbying and interests and whatnot. And, yes, I'm employed by Trinchero Family Estates, but I would imagine that through some of my communications with you, with the city council in general, and even some letters to the editor, that folks would recognize that I'm not, this winery representative, and I wouldn't want that to impact you, the committee, maybe discounting either Mario or myself because we both have the same employer. So I think I'm a very unbiased, fair witness to the whole process and the entire community. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I thought you had the last word, but we have 2 minutes, so you both have 1 minute. Mr. Rose, 1 minute.
Okay, in my 1 minute, I want to respond to Mark's comment or everyone thinking that was exactly my point. Is I don't think the people here are officially representing the wineries, and I think it's a good thing. That was my point, was that we don't have direct winery representation. I think the people here are doing it as individual citizens, and I think it's exactly what we need on this type of committee.
1 minute.
Yeah, my last comment was to build on what Garry said. Nice to see you, Garry. Is that I'm on the consumer end of the wine business, so I think I balance out the representation.
All right. Well, let's let our council go and get a break and something to eat. I thank you all for applying these positions. What we're going to do, we typically have, and we'll do that here, is a little sheet that sort of informally ranks each of the members, and then we turn that over to Cindy, and she calculates that. That information is turned over to the mayor. It's a very informal process. That is not the end all. The mayor ultimately makes those final recommendations and then seeks council approval, the majority vote, and that's how the process will work. And then we'll see you back. I don't think you all have to necessarily be back at our meeting, but we'll take it up again at our regular city council meeting. If I've said all that correctly, I hope I have, but if I haven't, Cindy, you will correct me, correct? Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for your service to our community. I really appreciate the conversation. More talking and more listening as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.